Very good day and hi. My name is Muhammad Haziq bin Awang Nasran. Today I will present on the topic of environmental concern, specifically in agriculture and food waste. In this presentation, these contents will be covered throughout the introductions, overview of agriculture and food waste, strategies and initiatives, recommendation for sustainable engagement, as well as the conclusion. Moving to introduction part, food and agriculture waste have emerged as critical issues at the intersection of environmental degradation, food insecurity, and sustainable development. According to the Food and Agriculture Organization, nearly 1.3 billion tons of food, as it indicated, the approximately one-third of global production has contributed to the loss or waste annually. Therefore, there are several aspects of agriculture and food waste will be discussed throughout the overview of this environmental concern, the strategy and initiative of the mitigation process, as well as the recommendation for sustainable engagement. The overview of agricultural and food waste will be discussed on its definition, sources of waste, and environmental impact. According to Food and Agriculture Organizations of the United Nations, agriculture and food waste refers to edible biomass lost or discarded at any point from production through consumption. Globally, about one-third of all food produced for human consumption is never eaten, as it is equating to roughly 1.3 billion tons annually. These losses undermine food security by reducing availability, while also squandering the land, water, energy, and labor invested in cultivation. The sources of waste are identified through the four main components, including the field and farm level losses, the agro-industrial byproducts, the supply chain stage, as well as the consumer level waste. At the field and farm level, its losses account for an estimated 20 to 30% of total harvest and arise from several interrelated factors. The factors such as labor shortage and equipment failures, adverse weather events, as well as grading and sorting of operation contributed to the waste production. Next, the agro-industrial byproducts are the leftover from crop and animal processing, as well as the processing remnants that rarely make it into our food supply, but hold real value if used. It often abandoned or burned in fields, while animal waste accumulate in lagoons that contributing to pollution and emissions. In terms of the supply chain stage, the sources of waste can be seen through these four stages, including post-harvest handling, processing and packaging, transport and logistics, as well as wholesale and retail. Each of the stages contributed to the agricultural and food waste production. The sources of waste also can be identified at the consumer level waste. The consumer level waste also contributed to the sources of agricultural and food waste due to the waste occurrence across three interconnected settings, including at household discards, food service and catering, as well as institutional settings. Consumer level waste arises across household, food services outlets, and institutional settings due to the over-purchasing, poor storage, and misunderstandings about food labeling. In food service and catering, large portion and unpredictable demand often leads to surplus food being discarded, while institutional environment face losses from rigid procurement systems and mismatched meal planning. In this presentation, the overview of agriculture and food waste also highlighted its environmental impacts in terms of greenhouse gas emission, resources depletion, and ecosystem degradations. Next, the greenhouse gas burden of waste food begins long before spoilage and associated with every phase of crop productions, from soil preparations, planting and fertilizations to irrigations, harvesting, and onwards transfers are relies heavily on fossil fuels energy. When the agricultural and food product is ultimately discarded, the carbon dioxide and nitrous oxide emitted throughout this stage, as well as released in vent as well the methane production. Second is resources depletion. Agriculture and food waste together drive significant depletions of natural resources due to the overuse of the natural resources and amplify pressure on ecosystem. This resources depletion can be seen clearly through the agriculture and food production by affecting the water depletion, land use and soil degradations energy, and greenhouse emission as well as the nutrient depletion and pollution. The environmental impact also can be seen through the ecosystem degradation. This is because unsustainable agricultural expansion and overproduction to meet consumption demand exacerbate deforestation, soil erosion, and biodiversity loss, as well as it is creating a feedback loop that undermines future food security. In addition, nitrogen and phosphorus runoff from waste crop contribute to eutrophications in aquatic ecosystem, as well as it will contribute to environmental consequences in terms of the biodiversity loss, water quality decline, and climate change acceleration. The strategies and initiatives aspect are one of the main components in this presentation as it's covered through the technological innovations, circular and regenerative system as well as governance and policy instruments. Firstly, the technological innovation can be implemented through these aspects, including the applying of precision agriculture, cold chain logistics, and smart packaging method. The example of the precision agriculture by applying GPS-enabled machinery, unmanned aerial drones, and in-field soil sensor, while the cold chain logistics contribute to extend the shelf life of perishable goods due to the factor of the improved refrigeration and transport system, as well as the smart packaging method help in time temperature indicators, moisture absorbing lines, and ethylene scavenging films. Second is circular and regenerative systems. The composting and anaerobic digestion food distribution platform as well as the regenerative agriculture are the strategies in circular and regenerative system. The composting and anaerobic digestion transform food scraps and crop residues into biofertilizer and biogas in the surrounding. The food distribution platform have played a big role in the aspect of supply and demand of the products on the right time. The regenerative system have the functions to rebuild soil structure, boost biodiversity, and sequester carbon. The current strategies and initiatives on the mitigation of agricultural and food waste can be emphasized through the governance and policy instrument by implementing at each stage of the international commitment, national strategies, legislative measures, and the public-private partnership. The governance and policy can be seen through the implementation on the United Nations Sustainable Development Goal 12.3, as well as Malaysia National Food Security Policy Action Plan 2021 until 2025. In order to combat this issue, there are several recommendations for sustainable engagement in terms of policymakers and governance, agriculture and food industry stakeholders, consumer and communities, as well as the academic and scientific communities. There are three approaches can be implemented by the policymakers and governance bodies, including the integrated food waste legislation, support circular economy transition, and invest in infrastructure. These components have been clearly seen through the implementation of the version of Act 672 in Malaysia to include food waste and circular economy principle, as well as the Malaysia Circular Economy Blueprint, which is 2025 until 2035. For agricultural and food industry stakeholders, there are several ways of sustainable engagement implemented in terms of the adopt sustainable agricultural practices, enhance supply chain, as well as foster public-private partnership. Adopt sustainable agricultural practice can be seen through the regenerative farming, precision irrigation, and nutrient recycling. The example of digital traceability platform, blockchain, and sensor in the supply chain transparency can be implemented by the stakeholder. Collaboration with NGO and every party involved is one of the examples in public-private partnership. Apart from that, at the consumer and communities level, the sustainable engagement can be implemented throughout the several ways in terms of promote food literacy, encourage localized solutions, and shift cultural norms. By launching the proper educational campaign on the portion planning, food labeling, as well as the implementation of composting initiative contributed to the promoting the food literacy. Next, by implementing through the urban gardens community food sharing platform, as well as the community fridge, help in encourage localized solution problem. By normalizing the consumption of imperfect agricultural and food products and traditional preservation methods, also change and shape the culture norms among the communities. Last but not least, the academic and scientific communities play a significant role in the aspect of sustainable engagement due to the involvement of research and study on the alternative of the measurable reduction way in agriculture and food waste. By emphasizing the advanced interdisciplinary research on this issue, the academicians and scientific community can carry out the investigation on the biochemical, ecological, as well as the socio-economic impacts of agriculture and food waste. The implementation of the development of contextual curriculum on each of the level education is essential to build the early awareness among the students. The role of academician and scientific community in monitoring and informing the policy through the evidence-based occur as it will contribute to measurable reduction, improve the mitigation process, as well as stronger economic resilience. As the conclusion, the agricultural and food waste is one of the environmental concerns occur rapidly, as well as it represents a critical issue on the environmental, economic, as well as the ethical challenges nowadays. There are several aspects of agricultural and food waste are discussed throughout this presentation in terms of the overview of this environmental concern, the strategies and initiative of the mitigation process, as well as the recommendation for sustainable engagement. Finally, reducing agriculture and food waste is not merely a technical challenge, but it is more imperative and each of the person's responsibility. By transforming agriculture and food waste into new opportunity, the world communities can advance environmental stewardship, enhance food security, as well as contribute to a more resilient and global food safety system. That's all for me. Thank you.